Hi, this is Courtney Baker, and I've elected to do my final project on Ford Motor Company, specifically the Electrical and Electronic Systems Engineering case study that was included for our Integrated Project Management course. In 2003, the Ford Motor Company began to implement a project management frame in their E&E department. The department is in charge of developing the electrical systems that go into all of the cars produced in North America, the trucks, the cars. They also are in charge of producing the software and the modeling software that goes along with the research and development. So there were several priorities for the department. The first was to improve quality. The second was also to improve quality. So we're clearly looking at an issue of project control here. They are producing large numbers of systems, but they're looking to make better products faster and more of them. As part of that, there's a focus on the departmental communications and the processes. They need to get messages from the top down. They need to be clear, they need to be concise, they need to be standardized in some format, which is why they're bringing in the project management model. One of the most interesting things about this case study is that it was a complete case study in our text, which meant that the analysis was already completed at the end. It was a fantastic article on how to do this the right way, or as close to the right way as possible. One of the best ways that Ford did this is through research. They researched the overall best practices and implemented what they thought would be the three most important best practices in changing over from the kind of line order management that they had to a project management model. The most important thing that Ford did was to create executive sponsorship. Everyone from the top down was ready to buy into this model. Every manager was ready to go. They were signed up for it. They were all trained on it extensively. Additionally, Ford brought in a professional project management team. These were people trained specifically in project management procedures who were able to guide through the transition, teach the people around them so that best practices were used from, again, top to bottom through everything. They internalized the project management with the idea that the engineers who are trained on the technical aspects were going to become the next generation of project managers so that they had the technical expertise and the project management training to be really effective on the line. To implement this model, Ford brought on between 5 and 8 full-time project managers, depending on the project load, who had the ability to sort of rein in the functional teams. The functional teams could not overrule the project management office. So if they'd been used to working with a particular supplier and said, I really need to do it this way because this is the only way they do it, the project management team was able to step in and say, okay, that falls outside of the scope. This is what we've, these are the regulations and the deliverables that we've created and set out. We need to stick to the plan, that kind of stuff. The teams included the project managers, the stakeholders who were the subject matter experts, those engineers that were out there actually creating the product, and then a governance board who had final say on deciding what the scope of these projects were. To evaluate the effectiveness of the transition to the project management framework, Ford used the criteria laid out in the Berkeley Project Management Maturity Model. That includes levels between 1 and 5, with a level 1 being an organization who has never used any sort of formal procedures or plans, no use of project management principles applied with any sort of consistency, and level 5, which is the sustained stage, where the project management framework is up and running and is constantly being fine-tuned to move fluidly as the organization grows, increases, changes what their focus is to kind of grow with the organization. In early 2003, the E&E maturity level would have been considered about a 1.85, which is typical of most organizations. They usually fall between a 1 and a 2. By the end of 2003, they'd made huge strides, though, to get all the way up to that level 3, which is a lot of growth in the matter of a few months. So how did Ford get this done? The biggest thing is that they were focused on the controlling aspects of the project. They wanted to have every aspect of it controlled. They were looking for quality control, they were looking for quality product, and they needed to identify ways to streamline, to standardize. So the input of the project management office was huge. They used it to create realigned resources to reflect the priorities of the company, redlining some projects that weren't going anywhere, that were just kind of money sucks. They created a model of continuous improvement throughout the project life cycles by thorough evaluation and continuous evaluation. The major problem in this case study is mobilizing a department the size of the E&E department. In order to be successful, all members from the top management to line workers needed to be trained and integrated into the project management process. Issues with communications arose when managers were uncertain of how to affect change to the project scope, which was decided by the governance board in collaboration with the project management team. Negotiations changed and became more structured. Procedures became more formal and regulated. This resulted in improved efficiencies and higher quality products. Strategically, Ford needs to onboard and train a department of 740 people. This means offering classes, tutorials, workshops, reading materials, and online training for all of them, with in-depth training for managers who will transition into the engineering project management positions as the professional project management team is phased out. In order to stay competitive with foreign car makers, Ford needed to improve efficiency and quality and improve it quickly. The American automotive industry struggled as manufacturers sought to keep up with the protocols of efficient foreign car makers. Given the employment situation in Detroit and surrounding automotive manufacturers across the country, employees did not really have a choice but to accept the new project management framework if they wished to remain employed. I suspect that given the climate, creating buy-in was not as difficult as it could have been if the American manufacturers were still sitting as king of the hill in the automotive world. Ford was completely committed to accepting a project management model. They went to great lengths to follow best practices and to train the entire department to rethink manufacturing. Although this was a huge cultural shift, the struggling industry needed the prodding to stay competitive, and it is very likely all members of the organization knew that the shift in methods to reach the priorities established by the company. As stated in the case study, the greatest resistance was not really resistance, but an issue with communication. New procedures require countless hours of training and re-education, but until the implementation starts, one can only attempt to predict the risk associated with a methodology change like this. Once procedures became routine, the E&E division started maturing rapidly, experiencing tremendous growth in 2003. In hindsight, it seems that there could have been clearer lines of communication regarding scope change and how that is dealt with. New procedures required approval from the governance board, which meant additional steps for the product managers. Until this became rote, it caused minor backups. Given that the model improved the overall efficiency by aligning projects to the outlined priorities, the transition was effective, despite a few bumps on the road. Transitioning a large department in a year, as Ford did, is a huge undertaking. It was only successful because of careful planning, clear expectations, well-defined priorities, and buy-in on all levels. Without support from the corporation from top to bottom, a reboot such as this would have been nearly impossible. However, with the ingenuity and firm guidance of the management at Ford, great things happened in a very short amount of time. In conclusion, even a giant in the automotive industry can avoid becoming a dinosaur by keeping abreast of current best practices and maintaining an eye on the changing business climate. Thank you.